I should have seen the signs earlier. The late-night texts she'd brush off with a quick, just a friend. The sudden nights out without inviting me. The way she started pulling away, physically and emotionally. But I was too blind, too comfortable, too in love to notice. Emily and I had been together for 4 years, and I thought we were solid. We'd been through tough times, sure, but we always made it through. That's why I never expected what she said one night over dinner. I think we should try an open relationship. I almost choked on my food. Wait, what? She set down her fork and sighed, like she'd been rehearsing this conversation in her head for weeks. I just feel like we've been together so long, and I haven't really experienced anything else. I love you, Jake, but I don't want to wake up in 10 years and regret not exploring more. I stared at her, my stomach twisting into knots. This wasn't coming out of nowhere. Something had changed. Someone had changed her. So, let me get this straight, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. You want to see other people, but still stay with me? She nodded, avoiding my eyes. It wouldn't change how I feel about you. It's just, I want some freedom, you know? To see what's out there. I don't want to lose you, but I don't want to have regrets either. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My girlfriend, the woman I pictured a future with, was asking for permission to cheat on me. Have you already found someone? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Emily hesitated. A second too long. No, she said, but it wasn't convincing. Silence stretched between us. My appetite was gone. My heart was pounding, and my mind raced through every possible response. Should I fight for her? Should I just walk away? Finally, I leaned back in my chair and exhaled sharply. If that's what you want, Emily, then you're free to do it. But don't expect me to stick around while you figure it out. Her eyes widened. Jake, that's not what I meant. I don't want to break up. No, I cut her off. What you want is to have me waiting for you while you explore. That's not love, Emily. That's selfish. She looked hurt, but I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I saw things clearly. This wasn't about her needing freedom. It was about her wanting something, or someone, else while keeping me as a safety net. I pushed my plate away and stood up. I'm not going to beg you to stay loyal to me. Do whatever you want, but don't expect me to sit here and be okay with it. Emily's lips parted, like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. That was the night everything changed, and it was only the beginning. I barely slept that night. My mind kept replaying the conversation over and over. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's face, her hesitation, her guilt. She had already made up her mind. I wasn't stupid. This wasn't a discussion. It was a warning, a way to soften the blow before she eventually left. The next morning, I woke up to find her acting like nothing had changed. She kissed me on the cheek, made coffee, and talked about her plans for the day like we hadn't just shattered something between us the night before. Are we just going to pretend that didn't happen? I asked, my voice still groggy from sleep. Emily sighed, setting down her mug. Jake, I don't want to fight. I'm not trying to fight, Emily. I'm trying to understand how you think we can go back to normal after what you said last night. She looked away. I don't want this to ruin us. I let out a humorless laugh. You think I'm the one ruining things? She flinched but didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed her bag and left for work, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That became the pattern. Emily pretending nothing was wrong, me drowning in doubt. And then, the changes started. She started coming home later. At first, it was little things, extra hours at work, spontaneous dinners with friends. Then, she started dressing differently. Tighter clothes, new makeup, perfume she never used to wear. The first time I confronted her, she rolled her eyes. Jake, I told you. I just need some space to figure things out. Figure what out? How far she could push me before I broke. How long I would sit there, waiting, while she tested the waters with someone else. One night, she came home around midnight, her hair messy, her lipstick smudged. I was sitting on the couch, waiting. Where were you? I asked. She hesitated. Out with friends. I stared at her. Who? She shifted uncomfortably. Just some coworkers. I clenched my jaw. Emily, don't lie to me. Her eyes flashed with annoyance. I'm not lying. Why do you always have to assume the worst? Because you wanted an open relationship, I shot back. Because you're acting different. Because you don't even look me in the eyes anymore. She groaned. Jake, I told you. I just need time. You're suffocating me. Suffocating you? I laughed bitterly. I've done nothing but give you space. And all you've done is pull further away. She shook her head, frustrated. I can't do this right now, she muttered before storming off to the bedroom. I sat there, staring at the door. I already knew the truth. Emily was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Days passed, then weeks. Emily and I were still together, but it felt like we were just two strangers living in the same space. Conversations became shorter, kisses became rarer, and the warmth we once shared had been replaced by something cold, something distant. I wanted to believe that things would go back to normal, that maybe she just needed time. But deep down, I knew better. One night, she got another text. She had been smiling at her phone a lot lately. Too much? Every time I walked into the room, she would angle the screen away or quickly lock it. This time, I decided to ask, who keeps texting you? She barely looked up. Just a friend. A friend? I repeated, crossing my arms. Since when do you hide your phone from me? She sighed, setting it down. Jake, this is exactly why I didn't want to tell you anything. You're being paranoid. Am I? I scoffed. You come home late, you won't tell me where you've been, and now you're smiling at your phone like a high school girl with a crush. Her face darkened. I told you, I needed space. I needed to figure things out. I felt my stomach twist. Figure things out? What was there to figure out? Either you love someone, or you don't. Either you stay, or you leave. I swallowed hard. Emily, are you seeing someone else? For a moment, she didn't answer. And that silence, that was all I needed to know. Jake, she finally said, her voice softer now, almost guilty. I didn't mean for things to get complicated. I laughed bitterly. Complicated? That's what we're calling it now. Her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Remorse, maybe. But it wasn't enough. I shook my head. Who is he? It's not like that, she said quickly. I haven't done anything. But I met someone, and I liked talking to him. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. You like talking to him? I repeated. So what am I, Emily? Just some guy you come home to while you figure out if he's better than me? She looked away. That's not fair. No, I said, stepping back. What's not fair is that I gave you everything, and it still wasn't enough. I turned away before she could see how much this was breaking me. She didn't try to stop me. That night, I slept on the couch. I didn't even want to be near her. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. This wasn't just about an open relationship anymore. This was about her choosing someone else, right in front of me. And worst of all, I wasn't sure I had the strength to walk away. I woke up on the couch with a stiff back and a heavier heart. The silence in the apartment was suffocating. Emily had left early for work, or at least that's what I told myself. I wanted to believe this was just a phase, that she would wake up one day and realize how much she was hurting me. But every time I looked into her eyes, I saw something different. I saw distance. I saw someone who was already halfway gone. That night, she came home late again. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched dinner, when the door finally creaked open. She stepped inside, looking exhausted but content. Hey, she said, like nothing was wrong. I just stared at her. Where were you? She hesitated, setting her bag down. I told you, I was out with friends. Friends, I echoed. Is he one of them? She exhaled sharply. Jake, I don't want to do this right now. Well, I do, I said, standing up. I don't deserve to be kept in the dark while you decide whether or not you still love me. Her jaw tightened. That's not fair. I let out a bitter laugh. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been breaking up with me before you started falling for someone else. She winced but didn't deny it. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to keep my voice steady. Do you even love me anymore? Her lips parted, but no words came out. That silence again. That was my answer. I felt my throat tighten, but I refused to let her see me break. Just tell me the truth, Emily. Are you sleeping with him? Her eyes widened. No, I swear, I haven't. I searched her face, and for some reason, I believed her. But that didn't make it hurt any less. So what now? I asked. Are you going to keep talking to him while I sit here like an idiot, waiting for you to decide? Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know what I want, Jake. I scoffed. You don't know? She shook her head. I love you. I do. But something feels missing. Missing? After everything we had built together? I took a shaky breath, my heart shattering piece by piece. Then maybe I should make this easier for you. Her eyes snapped to mine. What do you mean? I clenched my jaw. Maybe it's time I stop waiting for you to choose. For the first time, I was the one pulling away, and the look on her face told me she hadn't expected it. But I was done being someone's second choice. The tension in our apartment was unbearable. Every conversation with Emily felt like walking a tightrope, one wrong step away from a free fall. I had told myself I wouldn't wait around for her to decide, but deep down, I still hoped she would wake up and realize what she was losing. That hope shattered the night I saw her with him. It was a Friday. I had left work early, hoping we could talk, really talk, maybe even fix things. But as I drove past a quiet cafe on the other side of town, my heart stopped. There she was, sitting across from him, laughing. I pulled over and just watched. Her body language said everything, leaning in, twirling her hair, giving him that soft, playful smile that used to be mine. She looked happy, and suddenly, I felt sick. I clenched the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. Every part of me wanted to storm in there, flip the table, demand an explanation. But what would that do? She had already made her choice. She just didn't have the courage to say it. I drove off before I could do something stupid. When I got home, I packed a bag. I was done. Emily came home later that night, acting like nothing had happened. But I could see it in her eyes. She had no idea I knew. Hey, she said, setting her purse down. How was your day? I zipped up my duffel bag. I saw you. Her face paled. What? I saw you with him. Her mouth opened, then closed. Jake, it's not what you think. I let out a bitter laugh. Don't insult me. I saw the way you looked at him, the way you smiled at him. She ran a shaky hand through her hair. I was going to tell you. When? I snapped. After you kissed him? After you slept with him? Or were you just going to wait until I couldn't take it anymore and walked away? Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't want to hurt you. I shook my head, grabbing my bag. You already did. She stepped forward, reaching for me. Jake, please. I still care about you. I pulled away. Yeah? Then why wasn't I enough? Silence. And that was all I needed to hear. I took one last look at the woman I had once imagined a future with. The woman who had promised forever, but had already let go. Then I walked out the door. And this time, I wasn't looking back. The cold night air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside. My chest felt hollow, my head spinning with emotions I couldn't even name. I had walked out. I had finally walked out. But instead of feeling relief, I felt like I was falling into some endless void. I drove aimlessly for a while, gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers ached. My mind replayed everything, every moment with Emily, every fight, every lie I ignored because I was too scared to admit the truth. She had let go of me a long time ago. I was just the last one to realize it. Eventually, I ended up at my best friend Chris's place. I didn't even call first. I just knocked, and when he opened the door, one look at me was all he needed. Damn, he muttered. Come in. I stepped inside, the warmth of his apartment hitting me like a wave. Chris didn't ask questions, didn't push me to talk. He just handed me a beer, sat on the couch, and waited. I stared at the bottle in my hands, my throat tight. It's over. Chris exhaled, shaking his head. Finally. I looked at him sharply. What's that supposed to mean? He leaned forward. Dude, I love you. But you've been miserable for months. We all saw it. You just didn't want to. I opened my mouth to argue but stopped. He was right. I had been miserable. I had spent so much time trying to hold on to something that wasn't even mine anymore. Chris took a sip of his beer. So, what now? I let out a slow breath. I don't know. And that was the truth. I crashed on Chris's couch that night, staring at the ceiling long after he went to bed. Sleep didn't come easy. My mind kept drifting back to Emily, to all the ways things could have been different. But I knew there was no point in dwelling on it. By the next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit around and wallow in heartbreak. I had given her everything, and in the end, she chose someone else. That wasn't on me. That was on her. I pulled out my phone and started making plans. First, I found a new apartment. I couldn't keep crashing at Chris's place, and there was no way I was going back to our apartment. I needed a fresh start. Then, I started deleting photos. Every picture of us, every memory I thought I needed. It hurt like hell, but I refused to be haunted by the past. Finally, I sent Emily a message. Jake, I'll be by later this week to get the rest of my stuff. Leave it by the door. She read it immediately. A few minutes later, 3 little dots appeared, then disappeared. She had nothing left to say. Good, because I was done listening. The week passed in a blur. I stayed busy, packing, making calls, and avoiding anything that reminded me of Emily. But no matter how much I distracted myself, there was one thing left to do. I had to go back. Chris offered to come with me, but I refused. I need to do this alone, I told him. So, on a quiet Thursday evening, I found myself standing outside her apartment. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and knocked. The door swung open almost immediately. Emily stood there, looking different. She wasn't wearing makeup, her hair was in a messy bun, and her eyes had dark circles beneath them. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she stepped aside. Your stuff is inside. I walked in, forcing myself to keep my emotions in check. The place felt smaller than I remembered, colder somehow. Boxes sat by the door, but as I glanced around, I noticed something missing. The pictures. Every photo of us gone. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Good. This needed to be clean. No lingering attachments. Emily shifted awkwardly. I wasn't sure if you wanted the framed ones, so? I don't. My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. She nodded, biting her lip. Jake. I froze. Here it was. The moment I had been dreading. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. I never meant for things to end like this. I clenched my jaw. Then how did you mean for them to end, Emily? She flinched. I don't know. I thought we could figure it out. I let out a dry laugh. You wanted an open relationship. I didn't. What was there to figure out? She looked down, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't expected. Regret. But it didn't matter anymore. I grabbed my boxes and headed for the door. Before I stepped out, I turned back one last time. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. Emily blinked, her mouth slightly open like she wanted to say something. But she didn't, and I didn't wait. I walked out, shutting the door behind me. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The days after leaving Emily behind felt surreal. There was no anger left, no sadness, just a strange emptiness, like I had finally closed a book I had been forcing myself to read for too long. Chris and I spent the next few weeks setting up our new apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. For the first time in a while, I felt in control of my own life. One evening, as I sat on the balcony overlooking the city, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Emily, I know I don't deserve a response, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I thought I was making the right choice, but I realize now that I hurt you. I hope you're happy. Truly. I stared at the message for a long time. A part of me wanted to respond, to ask her if she had finally found what she was looking for. But another part of me knew the truth. It didn't matter anymore. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. Chris stepped out onto the balcony with 2 beers, handing me one. You okay? I exhaled, taking in the cool night air. Yeah, I think I am. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I was ready to move forward.